เรื่องของกระบวนการสร้างสันติภาพในพื้นที่จังหวัดชายแดนภาคใต้นะคะมีนักวิชาการจากหลายๆประเทศนะคะเข้ามาทำงานในประเทศไทยและเสนอแนวคิดที่แตกต่างกันออกไปนะคะทั้งทำงานวิจัยมีองค์ความรู้จากต่างประเทศและนำมาปรับใช้กับประเทศไทยจะนำไปสู่การแก้ปัญหาในพื้นที่ภาคใต้ได้อย่างไรนะคะวันนี้มีนักวิชาการ2ท่านที่ลงพื้นที่ในภาคใต้อย่างต่อเนื่องนะคะจะมาร่วมแลกเปลี่ยนกับตอบโจทย์นะคะท่านแรกค่ะศาสตราจารย์ดร.ดังแคนแมคคาโกค่ะเป็นศาสตราจารย์ประจำสำนักศึกษาการเมืองและการระหว่างประเทศจากมหาวิทยาลัยแห่งลีดส์จากประเทศอังกฤษนะคะและคุณมาโฮ นากายาม่าค่ะเจ้าหน้าที่มูลนิธิสันติภาพซาซากาวะจากประเทศญี่ปุ่นค่ะ Let me start with Maho. How have you used your knowledge from Japan and working in Indonesia in Thailand?
I came to Pattani, the southern Thailand, 3 years ago in the year of 2009 and met with many interesting people with many interesting ideas who trying to work for people to solve the problem here peace-free. And I feel very lucky being able to work with them. And I'm very happy working now, I mean, as an staff of the organization, helping the peace processes here.
Yeah. Before you came to Thailand, you were in Indonesia and you are fluent in Bahasa Indonesia. Is it different for you because you are now not speaking Thai?
For sure, I think my Bahasa Indonesia, Bahasa Melayu, helped me to work with the people in Pattani and southern Thailand because we can communicate directly and somehow we have some knowledge about the culture and language and the people here, and that I think will help me to communicate better with people here. Yes.
Also, Professor Duncan, you are very fluent in Thai. Does it give you big advantage as a researcher in the south of Thailand?
Certainly, being able to speak Thai is extremely useful in any part of Thailand. It might be a little bit less useful in the southern border provinces where many people have Pattani Malay as their first language, and I don't profess to speak Pattani Malay. However, I'd studied a little bit of Indonesian many years ago, so what I would do very often is try out my Indonesian on people in the village in Pattani, and very quickly they would be tired of talking to me in my broken Indonesian and decide that they could speak to me in Thai after all. So I used some kind of access point through that Indonesian skill, which is now almost lost, to get people to admit that they really know Thai. So Thai became a common language that two groups of people for whom it's not the first language could use, you know, me and a lot of my informants.
So can I say that you are now like insider researcher on the south of Thailand, not outsider anymore?
I don't know what constitutes an insider, and I'm not very comfortable with this inside-outside distinction because I think there are many people for whom the distinction is blurred and ambiguous. I mean, I don't know, for example, if people from Bangkok are insiders when they do research in southern Thailand. I suspect a lot of the time they're outsiders too. So it's hard to say what an insider is and what an outsider is. What I can say is that I was able to spend a whole year in the southern border provinces, that I had my own car, I drove to almost every district. My car is still well known in that area. So I became recognized and known to many people there. But whether I can really call myself an insider, I think that's going a little bit too far. I'm an outsider with whom many people inside the region became familiar, and I became familiar with them to a certain point.
Maho, you must have listened to lots of comments from women in community in the south of Thailand. What are the stories that have touched you the most?
Once I worked with a youth group, most of them who are supporting the teenagers who lost their parents and or their family members. Their stories are always touching, and because of that very sad experience, they have difficulty in overcoming the experiences. But I also met with many people who are trying to extend their help to support their education, their life. And what is also very touching for me to witness those kind of the support being extended to the difficult teenagers.
And is the role of researcher has to console people who have suffered the most, like wives who have lost their husbands or mother who have lost their sons during the violence? What's your role in it?
I think our role is to bring those stories to be heard by more people, because the conflict in Pattani, southern Thailand, is not very well known outside of the country. And I think, of course, sometimes international attention might work in a destructive way. Maybe the government becomes more sensitive, or I don't know. But in general, I think if international society have enough attention to what's going on in the conflict area, that would work positively in terms of there is a monitoring mechanism, there is somebody watching over what's going on, so it won't get really bad. And also the kind of the solidarity from outsiders can support morally, psychologically, people who are suffering from the conflict, which I believe. That's why that I'm still working for the Deep South people.
And currently you have to cooperate a lot with civil societies in Thailand. How has that strengthened your role in telling this story about the south of Thailand to international arena?
We have tried to invite the people from southern Thailand to talk in Japan or in some other countries about their problems, their challenges, their stories. But I think that kind of effort has to be done continuously. International society, I think that if it will be covered by media, like now that the problem in Syria is covered by world media, often then that people know, but the case of southern Thailand is not really covered internationally. And also that kind of the media coverage, maybe people hear about the name of the place, but don't really understand why the conflict is taking place.
Is this issue should be put in international arena, the south of Thailand, or it should be kept at domestic level?
Well, I think it depends what you mean by being put in the international arena. I think this kind of problem is a very serious one. It needs to be paid attention to beyond Thailand. I don't think we have to realize that certainly between 2004 and 2007, southern Thailand was the third most intensive insurgency in the world after Iraq and Afghanistan, which is a piece of information almost nobody gets to hear in Thailand. More than 5,000 people have been killed in this conflict. It's a huge problem, and this is not just some small thing that can be just regarded as a minor domestic issue that the rest of the world has no right to pay attention to. I think the rest of the world ought to be paying more attention to the issue than they are. Whether that means that any actual international agency would come and have a direct role in addressing the problem is a somewhat different set of questions. Clearly, to do that seriously, you'd need support from the government. The government would need to recognize and appreciate the problem on some level. But there's no doubt that already voluntary agencies and a number of other international bodies are paying a lot of attention to this issue, whether the Thai government likes it or not. It's a more serious issue than people would like to believe, and there's a very high level of denial about the problem, an attempt to deflect attention from the problem that we've got from successive governments in Bangkok.
And in the process of peace dialogue and peace process, how has international organizations can help?
A country like Thailand is very sensitive to its international image. Once the rest of the world starts to pay attention to this problem, then that's going to help people within Thailand to focus on the need to address the issues more seriously. So I think that's a very important part of the problem. Then there is obviously, almost all similar conflicts, and we have to see this conflict in the context of a series of similar conflicts. Northern Ireland is the one I'm most familiar with, coming from the UK and having previously lived in Belfast, but similar conflicts also elsewhere in this region and other parts of the world. I think the Thai government really needs to be more ready to listen to advice from people who've been dealing with other conflicts and not try to pretend that this is just some domestic problem that is going to go away soon, because 8 years have passed. The problem is showing absolutely no sign of going away.
You just mentioned the case of Northern Ireland and IRA,
Yes.
which has been the case study
Yes.
for the governments and involved party in Thailand as
Yes.
well. How long has it taken for the UK to settle the conflicts?
Settling, the conflict still goes on some level, but the core conflict in Northern Ireland lasted around 30 years. So it's a long process. And that process we have to see it in a series of stages. But what's very, very clear is that by the time the Blair government came to power in 1997, there was a real political will on the part of the British government, which probably hadn't been there before to the same degree. Tony Blair personally went to Northern Ireland, sat down with former terrorists, if you like, members of the IRA from the past, and got them, with help from Bill Clinton, the then US president, who made extensive telephone calls and sent his own emissary over. So there was very concerted effort by the political leadership of the country, supported by the leadership of the Irish Republic, who sent their own people to the conference table as well. So this was no longer just a British problem. It was the British government was ready to involve people from neighbouring countries, people from countries who might have influence over the thinking of those in the region. And what's very clear is there's an extremely strong political will by the Blair government. Later, Blair got into trouble with Iraq and other things, and his reputation was diminished. But if we just look at his reputation from his first year and a half in office, when he was concentrating on that Northern Ireland problem, he actually did an amazing job, and we have to give him credit for that. We have yet to see any Thai Prime Minister take the Southern Thai conflict as seriously as a British Prime Minister like Blair took what was actually, in the scale of things, a much smaller conflict. Fewer people killed during that 30-year period than have been killed already in southern Thailand.
Yeah.
I believe that, of course, the track one peace negotiation, if it takes place, is very important. But it's not only the track one negotiation itself cannot solve all the problems. So I think that it's very important for the Patani people to come up with concrete agenda and request as a wide, representing the wider community in southern Thailand and bringing that kind of request or agenda to the center in Bangkok to be understood by the top leadership.
What's your suggestion in order to solve from political intervention into the issue in the South? And what would be the proper solution in the end?
Well, I think the real problem at the moment in the South is a problem in Bangkok. It's an inability or refusal of people in the rest of Thailand, but very specifically the political elite and people in the upper echelons of the military, the bureaucracy, the judiciary, other institutions, to understand actually what's going on in the south of Thailand. We hear a lot of stories about this is about drugs, this is about crime, this is about smuggling, this is about local politicians with influence fighting each other in gang wars. I'm not saying there's none of that stuff going on, because we have that stuff in Northern Ireland and we have it in every kind of conflict. But at core, what's going on is very simple. We saw last week people planting Malaysian flags all over the area. They're asserting their dissatisfaction with the Thai state. The militant movement in the Deep South is a movement which opposes the power of the Thai state and is not happy with the way the Bangkok government behaves. In other words, the Thai state does not have complete legitimacy in these three southern border provinces. This is the point.
You mean that final solution should be autonomy to recognize their differences in terms of history, religion, and their language?
Well, it's not for me to say what the final solution should be, because I think that's what needs to emerge from a public debate in Thailand. But what I would say is some form of decentralization of power, some change in the existing power structures of the Thai state is needed to address this problem in the south, and also to address problems elsewhere in the country where we see people are not very happy in the north and northeast. I've visited lots of red shirt villages across the north and northeast where people are resisting to some degree the power of Bangkok. There's a sense in which Thailand's trying to use a 19th century colonial model of administration. It's not really working anymore. People in the deep south have a different kind of identity. Maybe it's something that you would actually call autonomy. Maybe it's something smaller than that, elected governors, some kind of local level elected councils. But at least you can't continue to send government officials from Bangkok, or more commonly down from the upper south, and lord it over people in the southern border provinces, tell them what to do, treat them in this condescending, top-down, patronizing way. This is what the core of the problem is all about.
Okay. Maho, do you agree with Professor Duncan's comment from your
Yes, I
experience?
100% agree with Dr. McGargo's argument that maybe Thailand need to search for some kind of the change at the political structural change, or you can call it administrative improvement or whatever. in which Patani Malay people, which are the majority of the population here in the Deep South, have the more decision-making power in the political system, like the government representing the majority of the population, with the Malayu language can be spoken as a second working language, or in the government, local government, the Patani Malayu Malay Muslim people should be represented also in the staff members of this local government, things like that. But of course, that kind of what would be the ideal type of the structural change is ideal for the people in Deep South. There should be the public debate, both in Bangkok and outside of the region, and also within the region in Deep South. Yeah.
What about the law, like martial law or emergency law? Should it be postponed or should it be lifted?
I think it should be lifted in the end, and the army and military and the police should be withdraw the major force. Scale down to the normal level of the security. But I don't think it can be realized now. So maybe I think the people in the all sector should work hard to realize that in the end, by going through step by step, maybe discussion about this political structure, what is needed in Deep South. You should do the discussion, and the people in the Deep South should raise more voices for the lifting up of this martial law and executive decree. That kind of the work has to be done step by step.
In the end, these identity questions are subordinate to other kinds of questions about how people see their place as citizens in Thai society. This is a very central point in all this. I think the problem people have when you talk about decentralization of power, autonomy, whatever it is, they get the wrong idea very quickly. They start to think, first of all, this could be against the constitution. Thailand's supposed to be a unitary state. So if we do that, we'll separate the people, we'll divide them, and we'll create conflict. And people also have the idea that somehow it's going to undermine Thailand's traditional institutions, it's going to undermine the role of the military, it's going to change the way that Thailand functions. And I think many people in Britain had the same anxiety. Just to refer back to Northern Ireland's usually my starting point. We had the same fear. If we start to change the way that we deal with the identity of people in Northern Ireland and give them their own regional assembly and so on, somehow then the country's going to start to fall into chaos or something like that. But that actually hasn't happened. What happened is we're still the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Just very recently, the Queen of England went to Northern Ireland. She shook hands with Martin McGuinness, who's a former leader of the IRA, who's now a prominent politician in Northern Ireland. And people didn't imagine that this handshake between the Queen of England and the former IRA leader could take place. It must be very difficult for the Queen of England to do that. But she was ready to bridge that gap and to make that signal, and also very difficult for Martin McGuinness to do that from his own community. So I believe that we have these kind of psychological problems in trying to imagine the next step. And of course we had them in Britain, you have them perhaps even more in Thailand. But if people can just believe that these differences can be bridged through a creative solution, and everybody must get credit for it. We mustn't sit around blaming everybody else for what happened in the past.
Maho, what's your recommendation to see light at the end of the tunnel for the Deep South in Thailand?
The key is in the how people in Bangkok and other parts of Thailand would see this problem. I think that of course the Deep South people also need to have more discussion on what they really want. If we talk about the administrative change or structural change. But people in other parts of Thailand need to understand more about what is the root causes of the conflict. And yes, as Dr. McGargo said, that it's not if you give the more power or administrative decision-making power to the people in the Deep South, it won't lead to the end of the Thailand. So you need to be creative enough to envision the better form of the country which can accommodate the differences and the diversity within the country. That kind of imagination, maybe people in Bangkok and other parts of Thailand should have, and that is a very important thing, I think.
Okay, thank you both of you for joining me ในตอบโจทย์ทั้งหมดคือตอบโจทย์สำหรับวันนี้นะคะเป็นเสียงสะท้อนจากคนทำงานในพื้นที่และนักวิชาการนะคะที่ศึกษาความเป็นไปในพื้นที่จังหวัดชายแดนภาคใต้และข้อเสนอนะคะว่าเรื่องบางเรื่องอาจจะต้องคิดแบบสร้างสรรค์และมีจินตนาการที่เหนือไปจากกรอบความคิดเดิมๆที่ทำงานกันอยู่ค่ะทั้งหมดคือตอบโจทย์สำหรับคืนนี้ค่ะดิฉันณัฐฐา โกมลวาทินสวัสดีค่ะ